Welcome to PunjabiPatriot.com.
How's business?
I can't make my Patriot Punjabis fast enough. Now I can afford help.
Well, quirky ads like this one are slowly becoming a lot more visible on TV screens across India. And that's because the big daddy of domain registration and web hosting, GoDaddy.com, is ramping up operations in India. And leading the charge for them is Rajiv Sodhi, who up until 2012 spent close to 11 years with Microsoft India. GoDaddy.com has more than 10 million customers across the world with 120,000 customers in India and claims to have grown more than 91% since last year. VC Circle caught up with Rajiv Sodhi to talk about the immediate goals the company has to achieve and how the domain market in India is developing.
What is the mandate handed over to you today from GoDaddy? What do you have to accomplish in India?
Yeah, see, I think although we've just entered the country, right, we started our operations in India somewhere in 2009 when we started offering .in domains, right. Since then, I think GoDaddy has seen a good amount of growth in India despite not being present here. So my job is really simple. My job is to come into the country. I think we are entering India at a very interesting juncture when the internet is about to take off, internet adoption is about to take off. So my job really is to partner and drive that adoption, make sure that we are working with the SMB customers who are really going to be leading this internet charge and becoming their one-stop IT shop, right? Okay. So we are here to make sure we give the best customer experience as small businesses in India try to come on board and bring their businesses online. We want to make sure we are there with them. We provide them with all the solutions that are needed to build their online presence and in the process give them the best customer experience from our point of view. So that's what my mandate is.
Okay. Or what is your strategy now to get talent on board?
Yeah, I think, as we were building this 40-person team that you're talking about, I think part of it was factored into the location itself, right? Okay. Hyderabad is in general an upcoming city. It has quite a good source of talent. Plus, it's one of the very few cities in India where you can do multilingual conversations with customers. You have English, Hindi, any which ways. Plus, you can do a little bit of South languages as well. So I think that was one area of how we wanted to address the talent piece. The second thing is obviously it's a process, right? When we are talking about our care center is how efficiently we are in our process to recruit talent, retain talent, and then once employees come into our organization, I think the real job starts then, right? Okay. Is what do we do with them? How do we engage them? How do we keep them motivated? And more importantly, how do we keep them in sync with whatever we are trying to do in the market? Because then that the employee feels engaged, feels part of the process, and then generally we've seen our attrition rates to be very, very low. Okay. GoDaddy in general, as a company worldwide, is known for its customer care service. So we, as an organization, we place. If you look at my experience, I've never seen any organization place such an emphasis on providing the right customer care to its customers. Okay. And what that means from an employee perspective is that employees who are working in this part of GoDaddy generally feel very enthused, very excited, and very engaged. In terms, it's not an afterthought in the company. Okay. Right.
You've grown at 91% over the last year. Mm-hmm. Is that really sustainable? Can you carry that forward? Will that go higher?
Yeah, let's put this into context, right? So if you look at India as a market, right, shortly I think if you look at the internet population in the country, which is really the target addressable market, that's about 120, 130 million people. That number alone, right, puts us as the third most connected country in the world, right, after US and China. Okay. So that's big, right? But when you put that number, 130, 120 million, in the context of the country, which is a country of 1.2 billion people, you're talking about a 10% market, right? Okay. Now really, when you're at a 10% penetration stage, there's nothing but growth waiting for you, unless some disaster happens, right? So obviously, we are still in the very early stages of this market. The rules of the games are getting defined. What is going to be a winning strategy? What is going to be a winning formula? I don't think anybody knows right now because this is at such an what will work for the first 10% may not work for you as the market goes and penetrates, right? So definitely, if you look at this 10%, and then if you go to the first thing that a person buys or an organization buys when they are looking to establish an online presence, which is a domain name. That's even lower. That's 3%.
Okay. All right.
Right? At 3% penetration, and if you look at the US, that's right above about 25-27%.
Okay.
You are in a very early stage of the market where definitely if the right macro environment is there, you can sustain such growth rates. It's not going to be surprising.
So if I had to put a number today to say the size of the market, or even I would say what is the potential size of this market can be, what would you say that is?
In terms of revenues, it'll be very tough, to be very honest, right? What you can predict is what is your addressable market, how many organizations can you go after, and how is that going to change. So this number of 120 by 2014, right, which is 2 years out from now, is expected to go to 300 million, right? That's roughly the size of the US, right? So the thing to think about is, in 2 years from now, you're operating in a market in India, right, which is the size of what the US connected population is going to look like. What these users will spend, which is when you start multiplying the customers with what they're going to spend average, right? That is going to get defined as we go along. I don't think the current metrics are the right metrics, is because India is a fundamentally very different market. Internet is still at the very early stages. When you're talking about SMB, the IT adoption is very, very low in India, right? Just about 30% of all SMBs have even one PC. So when you're at that stage, you're facing a situation where the user doesn't even know what his needs would be or how much he would want to spend. And it's not like SMBs sit on a ton of budget to do IT purchases, right? I think the key will be how relevant we make our solutions, right? How simple we make them, how do we tune them to the needs of the market, and then what is the approach in which we reach a customer, right? How do we provide a customer service? How do we keep on going back to the customer and saying, hey, you bought a domain, you probably need a website now. You've taken a website, I think you will need hosting for your needs, right? You've taken hosting, how will you secure your data? And gradually bring him up this curve. That's the time you'll probably start getting some sense of, okay, how much is this user going to spend, and consequently the size of the market. But as of right now, it's purely, I would say what people typically call a land grab mode, right? You're looking at how much acquisition can we do.
So it's safe to say that 91% growth rate, or even higher than this, is quite sustainable?
It should be. It should be. I think the more concerning factor that we are concerned about is what's the rate of growth of the market in terms of internet, right? Is the government placing enough emphasis, which I think the government is, right? Are the other macro factors like devices adoption and stuff like that, is that going high enough? And as long as some of these macros are there in place, I think the SMBs in India will keep on coming online. We can sustain growth rates like that.
All right. I want to is kind of like the daddy of the market entering India, and everyone's expected, or if the market is going to be defined right now, then in many ways GoDaddy will have to take some kind of lead, because we've got DirectEye, we've got Net4You and so many other companies there. How does GoDaddy US see the market in India in terms of players?
Sure. I think, again, I was just at another conference right now talking about the same thing, that when you think about domain names, you think about websites and hosting, these are not cutting edge technologies, right? These are not things that have been developed right now. It's not like big data, which is coming just now. But these are things that have been there for quite some time. Like I was saying, GoDaddy itself started offering .in domains somewhere back in 2009. Right? And so consequently, obviously, there are players, right, who offer these solutions in the market. But largely, it's a fragmented long tail, right, which do these things in the market. I think rather than think about what each player is doing, what are their strengths and weaknesses, again, going back to the point that the market is so nascent, I think our biggest sort of competition or our biggest focus point right now is the customer, right? Because you have a customer in India which is not as educated about the internet as, let's say, some of the developed market customers, right? You have a customer in India who, even if he has understood that, okay, internet is something great and it'll bring me some benefit, doesn't know how he has to go about doing this, right? You have a customer whose culture is not a do-it-yourself culture, but it's a do-it-for-me culture, right? So we really focused on understanding the needs of the customer and seeing what he needs and what needs to be provided in what manner, right? So that he actually gets the solution that he's looking for. And I think as long as we focus on that, I don't see a lot of competition for us. Quite frankly, I don't see it as an uphill battle, like you mentioned. But I do get why you made that statement. But I think as long as we focus on the market and the customer, this should be fine.
So can we say that GoDaddy would not look at a inorganic growth strategy for India?
See, historically, if you look at GoDaddy as a company worldwide, we've had organic growth.
Okay.
Right. So we started out by offering domain names, and then quickly built a whole range of services around it. Right. Almost like all of this was organically driven. Right. Okay. So we are a very technology-focused company. We take pride in the engineering organization and capabilities that the organization has. Right.
Okay.
That the company has, and consequently, all these products that we talk about today have come organically up. Right.
Okay.
And there is no reason for us to depart on that from India at this stage. Right. At this stage, our primary focus is we have a number of assets in the US.
Okay.
Bring them to India, right, and stabilize them. That's the number one job. And the second job after that is to spend an inordinate amount of time understanding the customer and the market.
Okay.
Right. Once we do these two things well, I think a step 3 will emerge. And I don't know right now whether that step 3 means go direct, go indirect, go organic or inorganic. It's too early for us to talk about that. But I don't think at this stage anything points us in that direction that it's going to be inorganic in India.
You know, ICANN is going to have an auction next year on high-level generic names, and I was wondering whether GoDaddy India would be in that auction process looking for something India-specific.
That is something we are right now engaged with from GoDaddy worldwide.
Okay.
Right. So we work obviously very closely with ICANN, and so that's something that is still going to be driven from a corporate perspective, not as much as from India.
Okay. You spoke before about bringing assets from the States into India. What would some of that infrastructure be?
See, as a company, you know, all the success that we've had on this route to becoming the largest domain registrar in the world, right, has been on few fundamentals. One of the first fundamental was customer service, like I was talking about.
Okay.
Because in this industry, in this business, it's very important to give the right customer experience to your prospect, even not even forget about your customer, and then to keep going back to the customer, engaging with him and seeing how his needs are evolving. 75% of all customers that GoDaddy has are small businesses. Small businesses, by definition, do some of their needs keeps on growing and evolving, right? So it's very important that you're in sync with your customer. Hence, the number one asset that we feel is critical to business is our customer care center. And as you know, we've just landed that. We've opened that in Hyderabad. It's been live since June 18th. We are very happy and encouraged by the response we're getting to that care center. Within 45 days, we had about 10,000 plus customer conversations in India, and this is only for India. Okay. Right. So obviously, it was a need in the market that was not getting fulfilled, which I think is there. So that's a good example of how we're bringing one of our assets into India. It's the first time. It's a big deal for us. Okay. Because it's the first time we're bringing a customer care facility outside of the US. We don't do it, but we've done it for India because we recognized giving the right experience close to the customer in his time zone, in his language, is going to be very important. And so that's one good example. The second big asset obviously is our website, which is one of the primary areas or avenues by which we engage our customers. And so obviously we've localized our site to India. We've made sure that we have Indian content, Indian context there, Indian pricing being there. And with some of these initial measures that we have taken, we are now the 40th most trafficked site in India for Alexa, right, in a very short period of time. So that's the second reason of how we'll bring our assets to India, right? And obviously we'll work on more.
Was there any specific purpose as to why you got CC Avenues as your online payment gateway?
More than CC Avenue, I think the whole attempt, right, was again to remove barriers to adoption. And one of the big barriers is convenience in payment, right? People, even without us coming to India, people have been working with GoDaddy, right? But you have to do a dollar transaction. You have to work with an international credit card, or you have to go to an international site. And
so all transactions will be in dollars?
No, even on the used to. Used to happen, right? And now what we've done is we've also, that's the third thing that we've done is also localize our payments. We offer alternate payments in local currency now. So we accept debit cards, credit cards, net banking. Just so that Indian customers find it very easy to transact in the currency of their choice and then in the payment modality of their choice, right? So that was one of the big reasons why we wanted to bring it to India. Make sure that the customer has the convenience in payment and he's always thinking about our solutions in local currency, right? Rather than thinking about dollar, factoring in conversion rates and stuff like that.
How do you all decide on pricing for domain names?
I think, see, domain names is obviously a fairly regulated industry, right? There is an ICANN fee there, there's a pricing that's determined by registry, and then obviously something that the registrar works on its own. I obviously cannot comment on the specifics of it because that's obviously a business model issue.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm very surprised actually that you're asking that question, but because in my experience, when it comes to domain names, the conversation is always around which domain name to take.
Okay.
And not always on the price, because the ticket value is so less that, if a customer is convinced that he needs a domain name for his business, I don't think he worries about the pricing as much as which domain name, which top level domain to go for, or whether I'll get that domain in .com or .net or .in or whatever.
All right. You've come out now with an advertising campaign for GoDaddy. What is the kind of strategy behind that advertising campaign, and how much would you want to spend on that?
Yeah, I mean, keeping the spending piece aside, I mean, the real reason why the advertising campaign is there. One, historically, I think we obviously try to make sure that we are in front of the customer. That's been our strategy in the US as well with the Super Bowl and the commercials that we run there. I think in India it's particularly more important. If I take you back to what I was saying, if you are in a situation where you still have 10% of the market which is penetrated, and SMBs are still, the vast majority are outside of the internet, then you need to do a phenomenal work in terms of driving awareness, right, as to why they should come online and what are the benefits they will come online with, right? And really that's where our advertising campaign is playing, because it's really a way to attract customers to come online, to come to our site, to see what all is possible, how in a matter of minutes, by not spending a whole lot of money, they can have a presence enabled on the internet, so that they can bring their business online. That's the first step. Okay. Then obviously once they have done that, our care center takes over in terms of engaging with the customer, making sure he understands the values, the benefits, and what other solutions he may need. But the advertising campaign is really one of the primary ways by which we want to drive education in the market and awareness on the market for the benefits of coming online.
Okay. If you have a one-year goal for GoDaddy, what would you be happy with in terms of just the amount of domains given out, or the amount of customers that you've collected, or even let's say the amount of employees or staff you've created? What would that be?
Yeah, I for sure it's not going to be about employees and staff, because this is not this is not like a system integrator who's going to say, okay, I'm going to hire 10,000 people and then we're going to build a business on that. It's not linked to employees, so it's definitely not employees. Clearly there are some business goals that we have as part of our business plan, which obviously one will be very happy if we hit them. But I think the two most important things that we are putting our sight on is, one, if we are able to make sure that we have brought our assets to India and stabilize them. I think definitely 12 months from now we should look back and feel very happy that this is GoDaddy in true spirit. If you were to go to the US and if you were to come to India, there shouldn't be a sort of a much difference between the two companies. It should be GoDaddy.
All right.
Right, so that's one thing. And I think the second thing is, if we are able to work with the ecosystem, with government bodies, with other players, with other software vendors that are there in the market, or other players who are focused on the SMB market, and join hands with them to drive internet adoption in the country, I think that's what will give us most sort of satisfaction there, so to say.
On that note, Rajiv Sodhi, thank you for talking to TechStep.
Thank you.